ladies and gentlemen, people always ask me, why do you still talk about silver? And I always smile because every time the world thinks silver is done, it does something extraordinary. And today, silver just did something amazing, not interesting, amazing. And if you understand what just happened, even a little, it changes how you see your money, your savings, your future forever, because silver didn't just move in price. Silver exposed the truth. The financial system is shifting fast, and silver just sent a major signal the masses are ignoring. Most people don't see it because they're trained not to. They're trained to look at the stock market like it's a scoreboard, as if green numbers mean they're winning and red numbers mean they're losing. They're trained to believe the system is stable, that the people in charge know what they're doing, and that everything will somehow work out. That illusion is starting to crack, and when illusions crack, reality shows up. Sometimes loudly, sometimes quietly, but always with truth. Silver just delivered one of those truths, a truth most people are not prepared for, a truth most people don't want to hear because it challenges everything they believe about money. But the people who understand money, real money, saw the signal immediately. The moment silver moved the way it did, it exposed the weakness of the entire system. Because silver doesn't move without reason. It doesn't jump just because traders are bored. It moves when confidence in paper starts breaking. It moves when governments push debt past the point of logic. It moves when the world starts sensing danger in the shadows of the financial markets. Silver is not emotional. It doesn't care about politics, central bank press conferences, or promises printed on paper. It responds to reality, not headlines. And the reality today is simple. People are losing trust. They may not say it out loud, but deep down they feel it. They see the rising prices. They feel the shrinking paychecks. They hear the nonsense coming from financial experts. And something inside them whispers, this isn't right. Silver rising is that whisper turning into a shout. For decades, the masses were kept asleep with stories that metals are old-fashioned, that the future is digital, that money is whatever the government says it is. But here's the truth. Every time a financial system breaks, people run back to the same things that have protected them for hundreds of years. Gold, silver, real assets, tangible wealth, not slogans, not promises, not numbers typed into a bank's computer. And this time silver is telling us the break has already started. Most people won't see it until it's too late. They never do. The average saver waits for permission. They wait for the news to confirm it. They wait until the crowd panics, and by then the opportunity is gone. But there are always a few who see the signal early. They understand patterns. They understand history. They understand that when silver moves fast, it's not reacting. It's warning. It's saying the world is shifting in ways the masses won't understand for months, maybe years. Smart money is already positioning. They're not tweeting about it. They're not telling their friends. They're not bragging. They're quietly converting paper into something real, something they can touch, something that doesn't vanish when markets freeze or banks close their doors. The average person, meanwhile, is still arguing about inflation numbers and waiting for some economist on TV to tell them what to do. They haven't yet realized that economists don't protect you. Assets do. Silver just sent out a flare, a bright one. But only the people who are awake can see it. The system is shifting faster than most people can imagine, and silver is not reacting to chaos. It's predicting it. The question now is simple. Will people listen to the signal, or will they keep trusting the illusion until the illusion collapses? Investors are waking up as real assets outperform paper promises, and it's about time. For years, people were hypnotized into believing that paper wealth was real wealth. They believed numbers on a screen were the same as owning something tangible. They believed promises made by institutions were as good as having something in their hands. But that illusion is fading, and you can feel the shift. It's happening quietly at first. But every real investor can sense the direction the world is returning to reality. For too long, the financial system has operated on trust. Trust that governments will manage debt responsibly. Trust that central banks will protect the value of money. Trust that markets will always recover. But trust is not a financial strategy. Trust is not an asset. Trust doesn't pay your bills when currencies fall or protect your savings when markets crash. And slowly, people are realizing this. They're noticing the cracks in the foundation, and they're moving toward what has always been real. Real assets are not complicated. They don't require fancy theories or complicated models. They don't depend on political speeches or central bank predictions. Real assets are simply things that the world needs, things that hold value because they are useful, rare or essential. Real estate, energy, metals, commodities, things you can see, touch, and understand without a PhD in economics. The problem with paper promises is that they can disappear. They're backed by confidence, and confidence is fragile. One announcement, one crisis, one policy mistake, and suddenly that paper isn't worth what you thought it was. You've seen it in stock markets, you've seen it in currencies, you've seen it in bonds. People who trusted the system found out the hard way that promises don't always get kept. Meanwhile, investors who understood the difference between owning something real and owning a promise are now standing in a much stronger position. They watched real assets rise while paper assets trembled. They watched value move in their favor because they weren't gambling. They were storing wealth in things that don't vanish. This awakening didn't happen by accident. It happened because the world finally hit a point where the truth became impossible to ignore. Inflation wasn't temporary. Debt wasn't manageable. Markets weren't stable. People weren't secure. All the stories they were told fell apart. And when stories fall apart, people start looking for something solid. And they found it real assets. Investors are waking up because they feel the ground shifting underneath them. They're not listening to the news anymore. They're looking at their own bank accounts, their own cost of living, their own financial reality. They're realizing the system rewards those who take control and punishes those who trust blindly. The most dangerous thing a person can do today is assume things will go back to normal. There is no normal. There is only change. And in times of change, the smartest people rediscover the basics. Own what is real, not what is promised. Own what can't be printed. Own what doesn't vanish. That's why investors are waking up. Not because they suddenly became wiser overnight, but because the system forced them to. It pushed them out of their comfort zone and into the truth. And the truth is simple. Real assets outperform paper promises because paper promises depend on other people. But real assets depend on reality, and reality always wins. Silver's latest move exposes weakness in fiat money and growing distrust in central banking. Most people won't say it out loud because they're conditioned to believe the system is solid, stable, and permanent. They're taught that government-issued currency is safe and that central banks are the guardians of financial order. The truth is beginning to slip through the cracks, and silver just made that truth impossible to ignore. When silver jumps unexpectedly, it's not a random market event. It's a message, it's a signal. It's the market's way of saying something underneath the surface is breaking. And this time that something is trust. Trust in money, trust in leadership, trust in the entire economic structure that most people depend on without understanding. Fiat money survives on one thing, belief. It has no intrinsic value. It's not backed by anything tangible. Its strength comes from people agreeing to use it, accepting it, and believing that it will buy tomorrow what it buys today. But when people begin to sense that this belief is weakening, when they start questioning whether their currency is actually holding its value, they turn to assets that don't require faith. Assets that prove their worth every single day. Silver doesn't need anyone's belief. It doesn't need a government decree. It doesn't need a policy announcement. Silver is valuable because it is real, rare, and essential. It has utility in every major industry: energy, electronics, medicine, infrastructure. It has been money for thousands of years, long before central banks existed, and it will still be valuable long after they lose their influence. When a currency weakens, silver rises. When central banks lose credibility, silver rises. When people start doubting the future of the financial system, silver rises. And that's exactly what we're seeing today. Central banks spent years convincing the world that they could print wealth. They lowered interest rates to zero, then below zero. They created trillions of dollars out of nothing and called it economic stimulus. They pretended that inflation was temporary, transitory, manageable, but you can't print prosperity and you can't fool reality. When too much money chases too few goods, the value of that money falls. Everyone knows it now, especially the people who are paying double for groceries, rent, and fuel. So, what happens when people realize the money in their hands is losing value faster than they can earn it? They look for protection. They look for something the printing press can't dilute. They look for something honest. That's where silver comes in. Its recent move wasn't just a price jump. It was the market screaming that fiat money is failing. It was a warning that the world is losing faith in the people who control the currency. When trust falls, people run toward truth. And silver, like fiat money, tells the truth with every ounce. Central banks know this. They know exactly what silver's rise means. They understand that metals are a report card on their performance. And lately they're failing the test. That's why they try to downplay precious metals. That's why they don't like talking about inflation honestly. That's why every time silver moves, the establishment gets nervous. People aren't stupid. They see the debt climbing. They see prices rising. They see politicians arguing instead of solving problems. And they see silver responding to all of it. The distrust is growing. And the move in silver is the market's way of saying the old system is breaking and then the real money is waking up. Anyone paying attention can see what's coming. The signals are clear. The question is how many people will act before the next big shift hits. Smart money is accumulating quietly while mainstream media stays silent. And that silence is not an accident. It never is. When the biggest players in the world make their moves, they don't announce it. They don't broadcast it. They don't warn anyone. They operate in the shadows. They act before the story breaks. And they position themselves before the crowd even knows something is happening. That is how the wealthy stay wealthy, by moving early, moving quietly, and moving into assets the average person ignores until it's too late. Right now, that quiet accumulation is happening in real assets, especially silver. And the interesting part isn't just that silver is being bought, it's who is buying it. The institutions, the funds, the insiders, the people who understand cycles, the people who study history, people who never trust a system that is built on debt and hope. They're moving their money where value is real, not where value is promised. Meanwhile, mainstream media is awake enough to notice what's happening, but not honest enough to talk about it. They're designed to keep people calm, not informed. They're designed to entertain, not educate. They're designed to keep attention on the theater, not the truth. If the average saver understood how aggressively smart money is accumulating silver right now, they would start asking questions the establishment doesn't want to answer. Silence is a strategy. When powerful players buy something, they don't want competition. They don't want millions of people suddenly realizing what's valuable. They don't want the price to move before they finish positioning. So the safest way to accumulate is quietly, while everyone else is distracted by news stories that don't matter, market gossip that has no impact, and political drama that keeps people emotionally occupied instead of financially awake. Smart money knows the system is stretched thin. They can see the debt levels. They understand inflation is not going away. They know central banks don't have a painless exit. They know currencies lose value not because of accidents, but because that's the only way governments can survive their own overspending. And they also know the average person will not wake up until the system forces them to. But by the time the average person wakes up, it's already too late. That's how these cycles always work. The few prepare, the many react, the few accumulate. The many panic, the few buy during silence. The many buy during chaos, and chaos is always more expensive. You can see the pattern today. Silver demand from institutions is rising. Physical shortages are becoming more common. Big buyers are taking long positions. Emerging markets are stacking metals at levels not seen in decades. Sovereign wealth funds are diversifying away from paper assets and into commodities. These moves aren't random. They're coordinated decisions by people who understand that the next financial chapter is going to look very different from the last one. And while all of this is happening, the mainstream narrative avoids the topic. They tell people everything is stable. They tell them inflation is easing. They tell them savings accounts are safe. They tell them the system is strong. But none of that aligns with the behavior of the smartest investors in the world. If everything was truly stable, there wouldn't be massive silent accumulation of metals. The silence itself is the signal. When the wealthiest people on the planet start converting their paper into silver quietly, it means they don't trust the system to stay intact. It means they see a shift coming. It means they understand the game is changing. The real question now is simple. People see the silence for what it truly is, a warning, or will they wait until the noise begins when the opportunity has already passed? The window to act is getting smaller, and those who understand history will not wait. That's how it has always been. Every major financial shift in history comes with a warning, and every warning comes with a limited amount of time. Most people only recognize the turning point in hindsight, when the opportunity is gone and the consequences have already arrived. But the people who study history, who understand cycles, who know how wealth moves, they never wait for confirmation. They act when the signals appear, not when the crowd wakes up. Right now, those signals are flashing everywhere. You can see them in the markets, in the currency instability, in the rising costs of living, in the panic behind political speeches, and in the way central banks keep changing their stories. Nothing is stable, nothing is certain, and every move they make to fix. The system seems to create a bigger problem the next month. The window is closing because the system is reaching a point where small adjustments won't make a difference. Once confidence collapses, the reaction is immediate and brutal. Prices move too fast, supply dries up, panic replaces planning, and the same people who ignored every warning suddenly try to make the same move everyone else is making. That's when assets spike. That's when shelves empty. That's when banks set limits. That's when the rules change. But when you act early, you avoid all of that chaos. You're not competing with the crowd. You're preparing when everything is still available and still affordable. That is exactly why the smartest investors always move before the rest of the world notices what's happening. They aren't lucky. They aren't guessing. They're simply paying attention to the writing on the wall. History teaches one lesson over and over. When a financial system is weakening, real assets become the lifeboat every single time. Whether it's ancient empires, medieval kingdoms, modern nations, or global economies, the pattern never changes. First comes the debt, then the inflation, then the political excuses, then the loss of confidence, and finally the rush toward real stores of value. We're somewhere in the middle of that cycle right now, not at the start and not yet at the chaotic end, which means the opportunity still exists, but only for a limited time. The people who understand history see it clearly. They know the importance of acting before the crowd reacts. They don't wait for news channels to confirm it. They don't wait for central banks to admit they lost control. They don't wait for friends or family to agree. They trust the pattern because the pattern has never lied. Most people, unfortunately, will wait. They always do. They wait because acting early feels uncomfortable. It feels risky. They wait because they want someone to tell them exactly what to do. They wait because they assume something will magically improve, but nothing improves on its own. Not debt, not inflation, not broken systems. Someone pays the price. And history shows it's usually the people who waited too long. Those who understand history aren't smarter. They're simply honest about what they're seeing. They admit the system is shaking. They see the currency losing purchasing power. They see the world shifting from paper promises to real assets, and they know that once momentum turns, once the system crosses a certain point, there's no going back. That's why the window to act is shrinking. That's why hesitation is dangerous. That's why the people who recognize the signs are moving right now, not tomorrow, not next month, not when things calm down. The world is preparing for a new financial chapter, and the people who act before the page turns are the ones who come out ahead. Those who wait will spend years wondering why they didn't move when the window was still open. So ask yourself this: are you going to be the person who wakes up after the world changes, or the person who wakes up before? Because silver isn't waiting, the world isn't waiting, the system isn't slowing down. Today, silver did something amazing. But the real question is, will you do something about it before the next big move happens? The choice is yours.